Surviving getting shot and paralyzed changed my entire life. Here's part 2 of my story. Let's get into it. Greetings all, I'm Tyron Leigh. In my previous video, I discussed how I got shot. If you've missed that video, I'll leave a link in the comments below so you can go and watch that video first. I was immediately rushed in for emergency surgery. The main goal was to stem the bleeding, as I had lost a critical amount of blood by this point already. Due to the amount of blood that was in my abdomen, it made it difficult for them to see if there were further issues, so they knew that they would have to return for a second surgery once the bleeding had cleared up. They had also noticed in the surgery that my spleen was heavily damaged, so they removed my spleen. I was put into an induced coma to help me recover through this period, and I was also placed on a ventilator because my stomach had started swelling and they were worried it was going to put too much pressure on my lungs. A couple of days later, I went in for a second surgery. This surgery was to stem whatever bleeding was left over. They also fixed a piece of my colon. During this process, they discovered that the artery to my left kidney had been damaged, so much so that the kidney had started to die and they had to remove the kidney. Later on, they did x-rays and they discovered that the bullet had actually fragmented in my body. It started to settle around my spine on the L1, L2 region. It appears as if the bone was never actually damaged by the bullet, so the spine itself was never hit by the bullet, but the shockwave itself was strong enough to sever the spinal cord inside. This was the point where they were worried that I would not be able to walk again, but this would not be confirmed until I woke up. My lungs became such a point of concern for the doctors that 2 weeks after being placed in an induced coma, I was rushed back into surgery to have another emergency procedure performed. This procedure is called ECMO. Essentially what it is a tube is connected into my artery. It takes the blood out of my system, pumps it through a machine that oxygenates the blood, then returns the oxygenated blood back into my body. The reason for this was because my lung function was pretty much non-existent. They were actually worried I would die going from trauma ICU where I was being kept to the surgery. That is how bad it was. In my previous video, I said that had I been at any other hospital, I would be dead right now. And the reason for that is Mill Park is one of 5 hospitals in the entire country that had ECMO at that point in time. So had I been at any other hospital, any local hospital, I would be dead right now. I owe that hospital my life. It took 5 weeks for me to wake up from my coma. It felt like a really long nap with very weird dreams. Morphine is one hell of a drug. My first memory is waking up seeing my parents smiling over me. But due to the medication that I was on and the dreams that I was having, to me they were missionaries standing over me praying for my soul. Weird. Even weirder was the first time my girlfriend walked into my room. I remember seeing her walk down this beautiful spiral staircase. Now I ask you, who here has ever seen a spiral staircase in the middle of an ICU ward? Right, apparently I did. It took weeks for my brain to normalize from the medication. When I awoke, I'm sure I looked something like Neo out of the Matrix movies, with tubes coming out everywhere. I was being fed intravenously, I was on dialysis for my kidney, I got ECMO through my artery, I had a tracheotomy for oxygen, and I was being fed meds through a drip. Slowly but surely, these were all removed as my body started to recover and I was able to sustain myself. As I became more aware, it seems as if my family's concerns were confirmed. I could not feel my legs from the waist down. 2 things stuck out for me from my stay in hospital. The first was that humans can be extremely negative. This specific morning, I was lying in my hospital bed, being literally kept alive by machines. I couldn't breathe for myself, I couldn't feed myself, I was unable to do anything for myself. And I had 4 nurses in my room complaining about the traffic they experienced on the way to work that morning, and how awful it would be if they would have to move closer to the hospital just to avoid traffic. Here I am in the bed, a perfect example of why they should appreciate their lives, but they still chose to be negative despite what was going on around them. The second thing that stood out for me was when I was finally moved to a general ward. At that stage, I was so weak I was unable to sit up by myself. On this particular evening, the gentleman that I shared the room with was sitting on the edge of his bed, busy eating his meal off of a tray. I remember looking at him sitting there and thinking, I wish I could be like him. I just want to be able to sit on the edge of my bed. I want to be like that man. And I started crying. It was extremely emotional for me to not be able to do something and wanting to be like someone else. The next morning, I woke up and noticed that his bed had been cleared. I asked the nurse if he was discharged, and she informed me, no. He had passed away in the middle of the night. Suddenly, my problems did not look so bad, and his life did not look so glamorous. This concludes part 2 of my story. In the next part, I'll be talking about going to a rehabilitation center where I would learn to live in a wheelchair. To make sure you don't miss this, subscribe to my channel, hit the bell notification, so you'll always be alerted when new videos come out. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.